After our next speaker, Amanda Kirk,
Yeah.
right?
So Amanda
Amanda, yes.
is a game developer, educator, and lifelong fan of games. Amanda has been designing games for a variety of audiences for over 10 years. She currently serves as a coordinator of RPI's Digital Game Hub by day, working with the local industry and schools to improve game development in the region. So let's welcome Amanda.
Hello, Amanda.
Hey, how's it going?
We're doing well. So far, no catastrophes. Looking forward to hearing your talk.
Yeah. All right. The slide should be showing. Are we
Yeah.
good?
Yes.
Cool.
That's right. We see you. Yep.
Great. Awesome. I'm super happy to be here. So the thing I really wanted to talk about was in my daily work, most of the stuff I do is fairly soft, but I do have a technical background, and I think that's really been the critical part of my success. So I really encourage people to try something new. So that's kind of what I'm going to be talking about today. Uh, so I think right now is a really good time to try something new and experiment with learning new skills and play, which of course is really important for game developers, is that we're able to create software that is really engaging and fun. And so to that end, I think if we look at skills development as something that is more than just hard work, and if we try to find ways to make it more of a playful experience and take principles from game design and incorporate them into how we approach problem solving, that's really something that can make learning new things really engaging. So right now, I really wish I had time and energy to work on my coding skills, but unfortunately, I'm working full time and I have a little toddler at home. So I've been using my time in the evenings to learn watercolor, which is really relaxing. Um, and my two 2 foot tall tyrant lets me do it. If I try to use a computer while he's awake, he's like, "No, no, won't have that." So when I think about my watercolor paintings, I'm not really comparing myself to someone who has 10 years experience or is really skilled at a specific medium, right? The medium of watercolor is different from someone who uses oil paints. It's something that I consider to be a hobby. And when I started to think about learning new code frameworks more as a hobby or something I do for fun in my spare time, I found that a lot of the things that was holding me back from, really diving in and figuring out, what specific languages and frameworks that I was really excited about, I was able to really get into that. A lot of times in the past, I found that I would compare myself to my friends, and a lot of them are really, really great engineers. And as a game designer, most of my work skills has been around communication and problem solving, and less about actually having the time to like put my nose down and figure things out. But like anything, it's really about the application of time, and that will create you the experience, like get you the experience that you need to actually be able to develop more wholeheartedly. Um, so hopefully, unlike me, you have time to dive into these things. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was the amount of access that we have. So I think one challenge that we have in upstate New York is that we have a smaller population than like a metropolitan area like Chicago or San Francisco, even Montreal. So there's less opportunities for programs that specifically impact underserved developers. So I'm rather jealous because I'm fairly connected to online communities, and because the game industry is fairly small. We know a lot of like each other in passing and at events. So I'm able to see, and you can see on the left side of the screen, I have a bunch of examples of nonprofits that are specifically developed to serve underserved game developers, and they may be located in Montreal or the UK, San Francisco, and what's great is now that we're in a situation where we can't meet in person, these programs have had to shift online. I also wanted to show on the right, we have a bunch of really great communities in our local area that I have participated in. And fortunately, they've also moved to online meetups and things. And so it's been really great because even though I can't leave my house, I can still connect with these people that I've connected with before. And hopefully, we're able to get even more people involved in what we're doing. I think what's really interesting about the capital region is that we have. So I live in Steventown, and that's like a half hour from Albany, right? And then we have people who are in Schenectady, and that's like also a half hour from Albany, even further. We have people in Saratoga. So we have all these like really cool, engaging things that are happening in our area. But for me to think of, after work, going out to another event and then coming home and getting home at 10 o'clock, that's a bit hard for me to do. So now that things are online, I can just plug in. And so I'm able to see a lot more things than I have in the past. So it's definitely worth looking and seeing. You might not have thought of things. You might be like, oh, that's too far away. A lot of conferences have moved to having online content, and those would typically be fairly expensive to attend. And now it's available and open, and you can kind of share them. And a lot of times, like this presentation right now, right, we're being recorded. So if it happened that you were outside enjoying the beautiful day and you're watching this in the evening, that's fine too, right? So it's really great that we've kind of adapted to our current situation. And so I think it's important to be mindful of the fact that we do have, it's unfortunate that we are in this situation, but fortunately, there's things that we can do to kind of pass the time. So I did want to talk a little bit about pressure, which I think is something that a lot of times can impede people from trying new things. Like if you did karate you've never done before, you're out of shape, you wouldn't want to do that. For coding, it can be the same thing where maybe you're familiar with a specific, you have a specific background and you want to try something new, but there's a lot of things that might be holding you back, right? So one thing to think about is that people learn in different ways. And so there's really no wrong answer to answer these questions. How do you learn best? What do you want to learn? And then what happens if you don't actually know? You're like, yeah, that thing looks cool that person made. How can I make it? So for myself personally, I really like learning things as a social event. I find that it's low pressure and really, for me, it's about engaging with other people and talking about common interests. So when I did have spare time, I was able to participate with our local Google developer group. I took a course in machine learning using the Google Cloud platform. And this was really great because we use something called Quick Labs, and I'll discuss that a little bit more in a minute. But the thing that was really nice is that it was like a whole Saturday event, and there was food and lots of food and prizes and hanging out and all this stuff. And then on top of that, I'm also learning something that everyone's talking about machine learning. So I wanted to see what the fuss was about. I had taken AI courses back when I was in college. And it's like, well, how far have we come? And trying to figure out, is what I had learned previously going to relate to what we're talking about now? So what I really liked about the Quick Lab is that you can just follow the instructions. It's kind of like baking a cake, right? So everything is provided for you, like a box of cake mix. You don't have to go and figure out, which specific types of flour you need or anything like that. It's just ready in this box. You pour it out, you add the water, and bang, you have machine learning Quick Labs coming along. So a lot of times with these types of things, you're using a bunch of different frameworks and setting up a bunch of different settings before you can even get to coding. And so that can sometimes be hard to work with. So with the Quick Lab, really, it just goes through the whole thing. So that was really great. So there's one thing I want. Oh, and the other, yeah, sorry. Yes. So talking about cake and about structure and sometimes not understanding how everything fits together is sometimes there'll be terms that you don't really understand. So we have a picture of delicious pie. So if you're new to pies, you haven't had a lot of pie, you might just call it a berry pie. And if someone told you this was a lingonberry acai pie, you might be a bit put off if you don't know what that is. How do you know if you'll like it, right? So these terms add this air of mystery to the pastry. It makes it sound more luxurious. But if someone told you that it was made from blueberries and cranberries, which are effectively like the same thing, they taste the same, right? Then you'd be more comfortable doing it. So I think the same thing holds true for technical terms. They can often confound and create barriers for people who are not as confident in the ecosystem. So sometimes people don't realize, like people who are experienced developers, they don't realize that this creates situations that might be exclusionary to new people because they don't understand this contextual vocabulary isn't something that is like a layman term, right? So I think one thing to think about is that there's really nothing wrong with not knowing a term or a language or framework or skill set. It's a question of asking questions and then finding yourself a community where people are willing to discuss with you and um, help you understand how everything fits together into the larger picture. It also, I think, is great that we have all of these resources like Google. You could Google it, right? But then you should also make sure to avoid the trap of just Googling everything and being in this cone of silence and not really knowing. Talk to people because you not knowing something is to be expected if you're just learning, right? And if people don't behave that way, then perhaps you're hanging out with the wrong people. So once I had a taste of Quick Labs, I started to wonder, what is it like to perform these operations out of the lab if I'm not following boxed instructions, right? What if it's like, what is it like if I'm using Google Cloud Platform and I want to do something new, exciting, different? When I was in high school and learning to code, I learned how to code C++ using a textbook. The teacher I had was a business teacher and she understood typing but not coding. And then as I grew up, I was in a time period where you would be expected to learn things by looking at textbooks, reference manuals. This is before Google existed. Whoa. So now what's great trying to investigate this ML exciting stuff is that there's lots of tools that have been developed to make our lives easier. There's colorful IDEs and there's resources like Stack Overflow. So the barrier to entry has really never been lower. I think what's been really great is I'd say probably 5 or 6 years ago, we started seeing a lot of ecosystems that were designed for kids to teach them how to get into STEM careers, right? So we have like Scratch, and there's a bunch of like really easy WYSIWYG things that Google's put out. And so now we've started to see things like CodePen and Glitch.me, which are they're like communities, right? So you can code live in a website and then you can share it with the whole community of other people. And then if you're new coming in and like you want to make this bongo cat jammy thing, you can just like click on it, go in, and you can see how they make these things, right? So it kind of gives you, if you're not inspired, you don't know what you want to make, you can go and learn there. There's lots of other resources and tools that if you get to the point where you've done enough structured things, or if you want to practice more, like if you're doing Albany Can Code or some other Udemy online thing and you feel like you're learning enough but you don't see how you would apply it, then there's a lot of resources for you to go and explore, which is really, really great. All right. And then, so a huge part of the thing I wanted to say about just learning new things in general is that I think the best part about game development is the eureka moment when things aren't working and you don't know why. So you become a detective and you have to figure out what part of your system is broken, right? And I think this is something that's true regardless of what field you're in, right? If you're an artist, or you're developing like user layouts, or if you're actually programming in the code, there's always things that you're trying to solve. And part of that, once you are experienced, that becomes part of the adventure of being in that problem solving method, right? And I think when we're new, we start to think that, oh, that's because I'm dumb, or this isn't for me. And it's really that you have to start to embrace kind of that detective mentality. And so I think having more experience solving technical problems will help you with your regular work, and it will also help you communicate with more technical people. So I hope that this is the end of it for me. So I hope you get to try something new. Cool. Thank you so much.
That was great. What was the first painting that you made with the colors?
What was the first what?
With the watercolors, right? You said yeah. What was the first watercolor painting as you were learning? What was the first?
That
image?
was it. That parakeet.
Was it the parrot?
Yeah.
Was it that parrot? Okay.
It was.
It was the parrot.
Yeah. Well,
right,
I mean,
great.
I did it in high school. Here he is. But that's my parakeet Martin that I had in college. Yeah, I had done watercolor once in high school, and then I got this set maybe a month and a half ago, and this is my first one that I did. So
nice.
Yeah.
You were talking about QuickBooks.
Yeah.
Or I'm not QuickBooks. Oh gosh, remind me. It's Quick what?
QuickLabs.
QuickLabs. Thank you. We've been using that in the Google developer group, and wow, has it been great! It because there's like you were saying, there's a bunch of stuff in development that sometimes you need to do before you can actually effectively code, and that platform really gets people into the cool stuff. I think gets it. I've heard people get discouraged because they can't get to the fun stuff. I think it's great that you found and demonstrated that. What the cat project? What are other things that you've seen in there that piqued your interest in QuickLabs?
Oh no, that cat thing is from CodePen. That's just random.
CodePen.
So yeah.
Okay.
So what I ended up doing with QuickLabs is I did the machine learning QuickLab with Google Developer Group, and then because you get 2 months free, I could sit at home. And I did the other, because I had broken my arm in the fall, so I missed 2 of them. So I did the other 2, and then I did one that was like dev frameworks. And the thing that's really great is you get badges for completing them. So you can do these like tasks, and then you unlock a badge at the end, and yay, gamification. So
yeah, that was we had really great attendance to that Google Cloud study jams. I remember everybody.
Linda, you set that up, didn't you?
Yeah, we had it at the TOG. How is the name? I don't remember.
Yeah, the center of gravity.
Yeah.
Yes, one of the acronyms.
Yeah,
right.
And now with COVID, it's free, so anyone can sign up and get something free.
Okay. These sandboxes for coding are so wonderful. I really like them, and it helps, especially for who has to set up their computers. And and when you are remote, sometimes when you do these code labs online, it's much easier and takes a lot of drain. Because when we are on person, it's easier to set up somebody else's computer. When you are remote, sometimes things get out of hand. So
aren't there a couple flavors of code labs? Which one did you do, Amanda?
The QuickLab?
No, I'm sorry, the machine learning, right? You with the Google cloud platform.
So I did it was the regular ML one, and then I went back and did the one for language and the one for
speech,
image detection. And then actually what I ended up doing, which I didn't have in here because I was trying to find things that were easy to jump into, is I started Googling around to figure out how I could create my own, so it's cute that I can do this QuickLab, right, and figure out how to do image detection within this little tiny framework. But how do people do it because it should be fairly easy, right, to connect to these libraries and whatever, and it's not super hard. So I ended up doing this JavaScript thing where it was trying to detect whether something was a cupcake or not. But I didn't like get to build out the data set yet. So that's kind of what I ended up doing, is I ended up finding a bunch of, it was an article on Medium actually about ML using JavaScript. So it's really fun.
That's great. Yeah, I recommend all of that stuff. And